Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, Steelers GM Omar Khan got a 3-year contract extension that will keep him here in Pittsburgh through the 2028 campaign. Today, I'm going to be breaking down why I think this is the right move by the Steelers organization, why I am happy that Con Artist is staying for the long term here in the Steel City. Before we get into today's video, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'm still on vacation this week, and I will be for the rest of the week, but next week we'll be back in our regular studio setup with all of our graphics and all that different stuff. But our commitment here at Steelers Talk is to give you guys free, informative, and in-depth Steelers coverage every single day, whether I'm on vacation, whether it's my day off, whether I'm in the studio. We're gonna get you guys free videos on this channel on the black and gold. So click that subscribe button if you want that extensive coverage. All right, so today's video, I kind of want to break down just what Omar Khan has done to this point as the Steelers general manager. Of course, he took over duties from Kevin Colbert just a few seasons ago. He has had 3 draft classes. He has had 3 full off seasons. At least until we get into training camp here at the end of the month. But for the most part, all the moves and the biggest moves made during the 2025 offseason have been made. So now that Khan is going to be sticking around for at least the next 4 years here in Pittsburgh as this team's general manager, kind of wanted to break down some of the moves that I really liked from Omar Khan throughout his 3 years as GM here, and why I'm very optimistic about the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers under the leadership and the watchful eye of the Con Artist. So first, I want to talk about the trades that Omar has been able to get done as the GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, my favorite was the Chase Claypool trade, where he traded Chase Claypool at this first ever NFL trade deadline, by the way, to the Chicago Bears in exchange for a second-round pick, which ended up being the 32nd overall pick, and that was the first pick in the second round of the 2023 NFL Draft. And usually that 32nd pick is a first-round pick, so you essentially swapped Chase Claypool, who was a terrible wide receiver, by the way, once he went to Chicago, for a first-round selection. So that was probably his magnum opus, and it was one of his first real kind of big moves as the Steelers GM. But you landed a guy in Joey Porter Jr. there that, you know, is the future #1 corner of this secondary, and has shown some really good stuff throughout his career. Now, Joey still has a little bit of a ways to go. He does grab too much. There's too many DPIs and holdings. You know, he did have some poor games last year down the stretch, but I still believe in his future. He's still very young and very talented. And overall, I think that was an absolute steal from Omar Khan, and probably his best trade as the Steelers GM to this point. But that's not the only trade that he has made. He also just traded for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, the big blockbuster trade that we have been talking about all week on this channel. And I do think this trade is going to look favorably for Omar Khan when it's all said and done. Minkah Fitzpatrick, over the last 2 years, his production and kind of his impact on the Steelers defense had been decreasing, and he ended up swapping him for not only somebody that I think is still better than Minkah Fitzpatrick and Jalen Ramsey, because he can play outside, he can play safety, he can play nickel, and he's going to be a fantastic blitzer for this defense. But you also get Jonnu Smith on top of that, somebody that's going to really create really tough matchups for opposing defenses with all the 12 and 13 personnel packages the Steelers are going to run under Arthur Smith here in 2025. So I really like that trade as well for Omar Khan. Some other ones that he made, the DK Metcalf trade. Earlier this offseason, the day before NFL free agency kicked off. They traded a second-round pick this year for DK, and I think that was probably around what his market value was. Obviously, a second-round pick, very high draft pick, but I think with DK's fit in the Steelers offense, playing that A.J. Brown role where he's going to be able to run a lot of slants, run a lot of goes, sluggos, digs, drift routes. Like, his skill set as a route runner and yards after the catch threat is absolutely perfect for that A.J. Brown role in this Arthur Smith offense. So I think that trade is going to look very favorably for Omar Khan as well when it's all said and done. And then a couple of wide receiver trades that he has made as well throughout the years. There's the Allen Robinson trade, where honestly, this might, ruffle some feathers out there, but I actually didn't mind that trade because the Steelers really didn't give up anything for him. It was a late round pick swap for somebody in Allen Robinson who is a good run blocker, to that point was still somebody that people believed could have a good season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously that didn't work out, but because it was so low risk, I think it was a decent move by Omar Khan to try and make a splash at the wide receiver position for pretty much nothing. And then, of course, there was the George Pickens trade, and I'm guessing this one is probably looked upon as the least favorable by some Steelers fans, because there's a lot of people in this fan base that really like George. They wanted him on this team. They wanted to see what he looked like in the same offense with DK Metcalf, and I was one of those people. I thought that would have been a lot of fun. But obviously Pickens was the type of person that this organization no longer wanted in their locker room. They wanted him to go somewhere else, and they wanted some more team-first mentalities on the roster. So they ended up flipping him for a third-round pick, which is pretty decent, and hopefully they can use that draft pick in the future to get a decent replacement for George Pickens down the road. Then I want to highlight some things that Khan has done in free agency, some of my favorite moves that he has made in free agency. Now, this one might be a little bit controversial because obviously it didn't end up working out last year with the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, but the fact that you got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields for the low price tag that you got them for, like Russell Wilson on the vet minimum, okay, like Russell Wilson's still a starter quality quarterback that, I thought if you put the proper help around him, could have been really successful here in Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, the Steelers weren't able to do that for Russ, and things kind of crumbled at the end. But taking a chance on somebody like that was a Super Bowl champion, really clutch player, great deep ball for the vet minimum, I think was absolutely worth it. And then getting Justin Fields for that 6th-round draft pick it ended up being, I think was a really good dart throw as well, because if Fields would have played better than he did in 2025, we'd be talking about, or in 2024, I should say, we'd be talking about him as the next franchise quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I like that kind of strategy of not paying a lot for your quarterback, having a right now option, and then having a potential franchise long-term option. Obviously, it didn't work out for either of those quarterbacks here in Pittsburgh, but I do really like the thinking and the process that Omar Khan did during last offseason at the quarterback position. Another thing that I have really liked about Omar Khan is that he has signed and he has now extended safety DeShon Elliott. Elliott came in on a super team-friendly deal last year, and honestly, he made more impact plays than Minkah Fitzpatrick did in this defense last year, putting him all over the place, sometimes in the slot, most of the time in the box, putting him out, deep as well. He would go out there and he would be a super reliable tackler. Out of all the players in the NFL that had at least 100 tackles last year, he was number 1 in the National Football League in missed tackle rate. And obviously, if you're number 1 in that category, it was the lowest. So he's super reliable tackler, a really intelligent player. Obviously, he's become a fan favorite because of some of his goofy antics on social media. Absolutely love DeShon Elliott. He's an absolute Steeler. And that was one of the better moves that Omar Khan has made in his time as GM. And then another thing, and this one might be another controversial one, but, like it or not, they went out and they pursued Aaron Rodgers this offseason, and they were successful in their pursuit. They did not waver. They did not panic and trade for like a 2nd or 3rd round pick for Kirk Cousins. They didn't draft Shadur Sanders in the 1st round like everybody thought they were going to. They stood by their guy, and that guy was Aaron Rodgers, and they allowed him to deal with his personal issues that he was dealing with during the offseason, and now he is the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they feel like he gives them the best possible chance to hoist a 7th Lombardi trophy at the end of this current NFL season. So whether you think it's going to work out long term or not, that was a successful strategy that Omar Khan and the Steelers front office were able to deploy. And then the final kind of category that I want to talk about in terms of Omar Khan's successes is what he's done in the draft. He's only had 3 drafts as the GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but especially early on in drafts, he has gotten a pretty darn good track record of finding players that have become contributors for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, Omar Khan has made 20 total picks in the NFL draft as the GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers. 12 of them are expected to be contributing players for the Steelers roster this year, whether that be as a true starter or whether that be as a rotational player that is expected to play a key role in either offense or defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's 12 out of 20 picks that Omar Khan has made. That's an excellent percentage, over 50%. That are going to be contributors for this team this year. Guys like Kaleb Johnson, Roman Wilson, Darnell Washington, Broderick Jones, Frazier, Mason McCormick, Troy Faurtanu, Nick Herbig, Derrick Harmon, Keeanu Benton, Payton Wilson, and Joey Porter Jr., all drafted by Omar Khan in the last 3 years, and all of them are expected to have contributing roles on either the offensive or defensive side of the ball. So that percentage of players turning into contributors in the draft has really been good in terms of the record for Omar Khan. And then some of the draft steals that I would consider steals, where he ended up drafting these players in these 3 years. Zach Frazier in round 2. You can make an argument he's already a top 5 center in all of football. Kaleb Johnson in round 3. I'm so confident that he is going to work out here in Pittsburgh. Just a perfect scheme fit for Arthur Smith's offense, and he falls to in round 3. Nick Herbig in round 4, one of the best rotational pass rushers in all of football, falls due in round 4. He had the wherewithal to take him and then keep him at edge rusher when a lot of people wanted him to make the move to off-ball linebacker. Payton Wilson in round 3. There was some buzz for Payton Wilson to go round 1 in last year's NFL draft. They end up getting him in round 3, and he looks primed for a breakout season this year. Keeanu Benton in round 2. I had a round 1 grade on Keeanu Benton, ends up going in round 2. Joey Porter Jr., another guy I had a round 1 grade on. You get him in round 2. And then Corey Trice Jr. in round 7. Now, Corey hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he is certainly somebody that still has a chance to be a contributing dime backer for the Steelers moving forward. And to get him in round 7, where the amount of contributing players you can potentially draft in round 7 are definitely low. So to be able to get him in round 7, I consider that to be a steal as well. So I think that Omar Khan's track record is pretty darn good to this point, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't had some blunders or some things that haven't gone his way. He missed out on the Brandon Ayuk situation last year. That was a big blunder for him because that forced the Steelers to have Van Jefferson as their number 2 receiver last year. And when George Pickens went down with his hamstring stuff and his injury last year, like this wide receiver core just had nothing. And a part of that was just he didn't have a plan after trading away Deontay Johnson. I don't necessarily hate the move to get rid of Deontay, but he didn't get a whole lot back for him. They kind of just dumped him, and then they didn't have a solid replacement plan. They didn't bring in a receiver that was available for them last year. They did draft Roman Wilson, but he was not available for them last year. And then when they tried to get Brandon Ayuk, obviously they fell right on their face, and they got played by Ayuk and his representation because he just wanted to stay in San Francisco all along, and Omar was not able to pick that up. Another thing that he has not done a very good job of and doesn't have a very good track record with is signing cornerbacks in free agency. He was the one that signed both Patrick Peterson and Dante Jackson, 2 guys that really didn't work out here in Pittsburgh. Hopefully this free agency signing this year with Darius Slay, even though he's another older corner, works out better than those 2 guys, but his track record of signing veteran corners in free agency, even though Dante was a part of a trade, hasn't been fantastic. And then, another mistake that I think that he has probably made is that he didn't lock up TJ Watt sooner. JJ Watt, his brother, has gone on the Pat McAfee show and has said this, like he was willing to take less money, when the market wasn't as high. And, they waited until after the Myles Garrett deal got done. And now it's looking like TJ wants to get paid more, or at least the same amount as Myles is getting right now, which is $40 million per season. That is quarterback level money. So if they would have just got that deal done sooner, they probably wouldn't be on the hook for that, and they'd be sitting pretty darn good in terms of the edge rusher market if they would have paid TJ Watt sooner as opposed to putting it off until this offseason. And now obviously, we're getting close to training camp and no deal has been made. I'm still not worried. I still think they will get it done. But the fact that you have to pay more now for TJ Watt is not something that is ideal, obviously. Then the final kind of blunder, at least to this point, we'll see how Broderick Jones does this year, but they did trade up, and they did trade an additional 4th-round pick to move up in the first round, and Omar Khan's first GM, or first draft as GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers, to take Broderick in round 1. Obviously he's played right tackle for these first 2 seasons, and he has not looked good. There's a lot of people that have very valid question marks and very valid questions surrounding Broderick Jones and his move back over to left tackle, where he played his college and high school ball. There's an argument to be made that Broderick should be better on the left side because that's what he did before, his entire life before he moved to Pittsburgh. So hopefully he's better on that left side than he was on the right. But there's also very valid questions as to, if you're not very good on the right side, left tackle usually, that's usually where you put your best pass protector. And Broderick hasn't exactly lived up to that to this point in his NFL journey. So that could be a potential blunder if Broderick just doesn't play well this year. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I would say right now, guys, that there has been more good than bad that has come out of Omar Khan Khan being the GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He hasn't been perfect. There has been some mistakes, and who knows, after this season we might have even a little bit more clarity as to some of these moves that he has made and whether or not they were the right decision for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Steelers clearly feel like, the direction that he's taking the team is a good one, and I don't think they would have made this call and, giving him a 3-year extension, keeping him here for at least the next 4 years under contract, unless they felt really good about where they stand with him as this team's general manager. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And you're great for what Omar Khan has done as the Steelers GM to this point. Would you give it an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F? For me right now, I'd probably give it an A-. Obviously, that's something that is subject to change, but I think he's done a really good job as the Steelers GM through his first 3 full years as this team's GM. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Give me your grade for Omar Khan down there in the comment section. And that'll be it for today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of today's show. We'll have more coverage on the Steelers tomorrow for you guys for free on this channel. So if you guys want that, click that subscribe button to never miss a video.